Good Tuesday afternoon, and thanks for joining us on KARE 11 News Now. I'm Lauren Lemanchek. We have an update on an overnight shooting in Burnsville. Authorities say a 14-year-old boy has died from his injuries. It happened just after 10:30 yesterday near Harriet Avenue South. The neighborhood was put on lockdown while police investigated the scene. Investigators say this shooting does not appear to be random. Just in this afternoon, Team USA Curling brings home the silver in the mixed doubles. They just lost to Sweden, but are still making history for the United States. It's the first time the U.S. has ever medaled in the mixed doubles, and Corey Teesey is the first American woman to earn any medal in Olympic curling history. In more great news from the Olympics, Team Jackie Wiles and Paula Moltzen finished with bronze medals in women's combined alpine skiing, falling only 0.07 of a second short of a silver. The race consists of one skier doing a downhill run while another takes over racing a slalom run. Their combined time determines the overall result. Team USA had 4 pairs of skiers competing in the race, including favorites Mikaela Shiffrin and Breezy Johnson. But Shiffrin was not able to capitalize on Johnson's winning downhill time, and that team fell back to 4th place. New this afternoon, Governor Tim Walz is providing an update on the federal surge in Minnesota.
I spoke with Tom Homan yesterday. I spoke with Susie Wiles, the President Chief of Staff, this morning. We're very much in a trust but verify mode, but it's my expectation, and we will hear more from them, I think, in the next day or so, that we are talking days, not weeks and months of this occupation, and it's an expectation that we will continue to get cooperation on joint investigations of the crimes that were committed or potentially committed against Minnesotans.
State leaders and business owners also spoke about the impact that immigration enforcement has had on the economy, highlighting that many businesses are experiencing reduced foot traffic, lost wages, and partial or full closure.
We were told the surge of federal agents was intended to make Minnesota safer. From the perspective of many restaurant operators, the result has instead been a climate of fear reminiscent of the early months of COVID, when people were afraid to leave their homes and normal community activities slowed dramatically. Since the start of Operation Metro Surge, many restaurants have experienced sales declines of 50 to 80%. Staffing has been severely disrupted, either because legal workers are afraid to travel to work for fear of being falsely detained, or because reduced customer traffic has forced businesses to cut hours.
New data released last week estimated that Minneapolis is losing $10 to $20 million every week since the beginning of Operation Metro Surge. Taking a live look now from Washington, D.C., where a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing is underway this afternoon. Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison were both asked to testify but declined. Instead, they'll testify before a House Oversight Committee next month. This afternoon, a look at a pair of guilty pleas by so-called fraud tourists who came here to Minnesota from out of state and stole millions of dollars from the state's housing stabilization program. Investigative reporter A.J. Legault reports from the federal court on the latest fallout from his housing hustle investigation.
Luxury cars, fancy clothes. Dr. Anthony Jefferson sold himself on social media as living the good life, a man about town in Philadelphia. He was also president of Good Life Christian University. But his good life came by exploiting the lives of Minnesota's poorest.
Excuse me, sir, why did you take so much money from our housing program? How much did that coat cost?
Jefferson admitted in court he stole $3.5 million from Minnesota's housing stabilization program, along with his co-conspirator, a Chanel suspenders-wearing man named Lester Brown. KARE 11 discovered he's actually a pastor.
And the Lord shall laugh at him, for he seeth that his day is coming.
On this day, a masked Reverend Brown did not want to talk to reporters.
Reverend Brown, what's the text station?
After pushing his way through the revolving door, the fleet-footed faith leader booked it away from our cameras. However, he had a friend in court. She identified herself only as Ms. Reed, who had her own message.
I look at it this way. We all make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. Okay? Nobody's perfect.
We learned in court the two men used imaginary employees and ChatGPT to forge fraudulent housing records.
The charges against Brown and Jefferson, who also left court face masked, came in the wake of KARE 11's housing hustle investigation that sparked numerous FBI raids and, today, 4 guilty pleas, this time from out-of-state profiteers.
This fraud tourism is new.
Minnesota's former fraud-fighting federal prosecutor Joe Thompson brought the charges back in December.
They heard that Minnesota and its Housing Stabilization Services program was easy money.
For that easy money, the Philly fraudsters are now facing hard time.
That sentencing will be at a later date. Now, the U.S. Attorney's Office is now in crisis mode following mass resignations, including Joe Thompson, who refused to go along with the DOJ's handling of protester Renee Good's killing by an ICE agent. The DOJ had to fly in a prosecutor from Detroit just to handle these prearranged guilty pleas. Just in this afternoon, the man police believe killed Hallie Tobler in St. Cloud is facing charges of second-degree murder. Police say her husband was taken into custody shortly after being released from the St. Cloud hospital. Officers say they found Hallie Tobler dead in an apartment on 40th Avenue South Saturday night. The medical examiner says she suffered multiple stab wounds. Her father, St. Cloud City Council member Jeff Johnson, suspended his bid for governor shortly after news of her death. Minnesota GOP Chair Alex Plekish spoke with Johnson over the weekend.
There really are no words to describe the grief and anger. I mean, nobody should go through this. It's a tragedy beyond words. My heart goes out to him and his family, especially in the circumstances that we're discovering.
Johnson's campaign for governor had been considered a long shot, but many of his leading GOP competitors, plus U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar, who was running for governor as a Democrat, issued statements saying they were praying for his family. A separate shakeup in the governor's race, Republican Scott Jensen, the party's 2022 nominee, is dropping out. Jensen announced he will run instead for state auditor. In a statement, Jensen says Minnesota needs to declare war on waste, fraud, and abuse and fix what's not working. Hundreds of millions of dollars in federal education funding is headed back to our state this afternoon. Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison announced it adds up to $530 million. He says his office and attorneys general from 18 other states reached a deal with the Trump administration to prevent the withholding of education funds from programs that refused to end DEI policies. This comes as we're learning more about the long-term implications of students missing school due to ICE activity, because school funding is tied to student attendance. Gordon Severson has a closer look at the strain districts face.
Outside Fridley Public Schools, marked police cars guard the main entrance every day because hundreds of families are scared to send their students to school during Operation Metro Surge.
400 students is what we're seeing.
Fridley Superintendent Brenda Lewis says that is how many students are currently enrolled in virtual learning, about 20% of the student body. But she says there's about 100 students who have simply disappeared.
They might have left the state. They might be living with relatives. They might be in detention centers.
Lewis says per state regulations, students who are absent 15 consecutive days could be dropped from enrollment, which could affect state funding, which is directly tied to enrollment numbers. In Fridley's case, Lewis says this could be a $500,000 hit to their budget.
It is fiscally decimating to districts.
St. Paul Public Schools is also concerned about nutrition funding. The problem is districts have to set employment contracts at the beginning of the school year. But now that many students are learning from home, the school districts are paying the same amount of money for staffing, but they're receiving less reimbursement money since the students aren't showing up to claim the meals.
That lunch funding is a huge area that causes us concern as well.
This on top of the many other concerns she has with students and families not feeling safe enough to walk into their schools. Gordon Severson, KARE 11 News.
Superintendent Lewis is asking the Minnesota Department of Education to temporarily change their enrollment rules to help out the districts. But when we asked MDE about this, a spokesperson says at this time, the 15-day enrollment rule will remain in effect, and districts are encouraged to use virtual learning to try to keep these students enrolled in school. New today, the FBI is releasing images of a suspected kidnapper of Nancy Guthrie, the mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie. These images show a masked individual who authorities say was armed and seemed to tamper with the camera at Guthrie's house. It has been just over a week since the 84-year-old was reported missing. Authorities are asking anyone who recognizes the person or has any more information to contact them at 800-225-5324. The FBI is offering a $50,000 reward to help find Nancy Guthrie. Stick with us. There is more news and weather coming up after the break.